Hi there. How is everybody doing today? So today I tested it this time ahead of time. Isn't that so exciting? Because I don't always. So I was playing with just a couple of colors and seeing if I could get the texture of this rhinoceros from my trip. And I really liked the way that it turned out. So I thought I would share with you guys how I did it. Um, it's not a super complicated project. It shouldn't take very long, and it's only a few colors. Now, if you don't have the colors that I have, it's no big deal. You can use any colors that you have, um, or any colors that make you happy. I think this rhinoceros could look really cool as a uh, bright orange rhinoceros or purple or blue. I think it's really fun to play with the colors and see what we have. But since I'm doing it for you guys, I will replicate what I did instead of just making up something new. And give me some patience and grace. Feet are always like the worst thing in the world for me, and I can never do feet. Okay, so that's what we're going to paint. We're using a 4x6 watercolor block from Canson. It's the Montval. I really like these. They hold a lot of water. They do pretty well. I've got it taped down. And if you don't have a watercolor block and you just have watercolor paper, also fine. I do this so I don't have to tape it down to my table so I can spin because I like to be able to move things around. If you have a clipboard or a painting board that you use and you can tape it on that, you can still spin it around. Perfect. If you have to tape it to your table and you physically move instead of this moving, again, not that big of a deal. It is whatever works for you so that you start painting and end up with things that you're proud of. So when I finish these, I usually stick them in a cellophane sleeve and then tape them to a 5x7 card front, send the card, and then whoever receives them can take the painting out of the card and frame it, throw it away, whatever it is that people do with the art that you provide to them, because we don't know. And once we've given it away, we have no control. Okay, enough with that rambling. So the colors that we use today, or that I'm planning on using, I reserve the right to change my mind, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick with this. That's what I did in the first place. Is I'm going to be using Daniel Smith's Moonglow, which is the color that I used for all of the rhinoceros. This is a fun granulating color. So you get dark purples, and then when it fades out, you kind of get some blues and you get some reds. So it's a really fun color to use, and it does some of the differentiations and everything else. I also use that on the horns. Um, in order to get the nostrils as black as I wanted, I did use Sodalite Genuine. However, you have your handy dandy pen and I didn't really like the way that it worked out, and I ended up adding it with the pen. So feel free to use the pen details. There's no watercolor police coming around saying you are not using the materials the way they feel they should be used. And then for this kind of fuzzy green background that I put down, I just used Viridian, which is also a Daniel Smith watercolor color. And the paints are starting to, like, I probably need to refill my palette, but that's okay. They're still there. As you can see, watercolor gets nice and hard and sometimes pops out of your palette. No big deal. You just drop it back in. Once you spray it with some water or dip it with a wet brush, it will reactivate. It is so weird how this stuff works, but it makes me super happy. So go ahead and pre-wet your colors. I have a spray bottle. You can use a spray bottle. You can use a water, like an eyedropper with water. You can take water from the brush and dip it in, or you can skip this step. Again, it is your painting and your process, and it's how you like to do things. That being said, let me get the water. Let me go ahead and get these wet. And then I have to remember which one's which because one of these is Payne's Gray and one of these is Moonglow. Well, thankfully I paint with this palette enough that I do know. So I'm putting a significant amount of water in there because I jump back and forth and then sometimes things don't dry, etc. Okay, enough rambling. Get to painting. I understand. I'm sorry. Okay, I have water and I have a 6, and I'm gonna do almost all of this with the 6. My outline is really dark. That is for your benefit. I used graphite transfer paper to get it onto this block. You can use a light block. You can sketch it yourself. You can do whatever you want. The paint is significantly dark enough that it will cover most of this, so I'm not too stressed out. Okay, that's a lot of precursors. So I'm going to get my 6. I'm going to get it wet, and I'm going to dip it into my Moonglow. I'm going to get a decent amount of paint on there. And then I'm going to start putting in the darker areas. I know it sounds backwards. You usually work quite light to dark. But with something like this, since I'm only doing it in one color, I like to put the darks down and then pull them to the light areas, and kind of give me more texture that way. If that's not the way you want to do this and you want to do a full light wash and then build up your darks, you are more than welcome to. This is just a different way of using this medium that makes me happy. And I you're free to break rules. You don't always have to do the rules the way that somebody says they're done. Anyway, let's get painting. Feel free to leave white marks all over the back because they have these birds that sit on top of them and poop all over them. The ones that we saw just had big poop spatters. So I tried to make sure I left some poop spatters because I thought it was funny. Okay, so this is a wide-lipped rhino. We call them a white rhino, but it's actually a wide-lip rhino because the mouth is wide and goes towards the ground. And if you see a black rhino, they actually have a pointy mouth. I did pay attention. All right, we're going to start with some of these big sections here. I'm going to start with this shoulder. And I can always add more paint if it doesn't get as dark as I want. So I'm going to just get this shoulder line in. Then I'm going to wet my brush. And I'm going to start pulling this around. Ooh, that's too much water. Tap it on your towel if it's too much. I'm using the brush to try to pull some of this excess water because I want a little nuts, but that's okay. I like watercolor blooming and things like that. I'm not a hyper realistic kind of painter, so I just kind of go with it. So I'm going to put where the dark parts are and then just kind of start filling in other spots. And I can always darken this back up, but I just want to get where I want everything to be to start. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more paint. We'll start hitting some more of the darker areas, like right here, where in his neck jowly fat. Their skin was so like leathery looking. It was crazy. All right, rinsing the brush, and I'm pulling that up. Now I'm going to do, and I don't know why I always work from right to left instead of left to right. I am right-handed. This is small enough it shouldn't be a problem, but I don't know why I have that burning desire to do that. I probably really good for people who are left-handed to follow me since I always work the reverse. So I just put some dark in right around the horns, and I'm leaving the horns alone for now. There's too much water in my brush. I'm going to come down and get the front of this lip, go up and over. And the top of their head, his head was pretty light in the reference photo. And if you're following me on Patreon, you have the reference photo. If you're following me on Drunken Aunt Wendy, you have the outline. So I'm really putting the paint on in very, I would say it's almost haphazard. I'm just kind of brushing it on, and I'm making my brush strokes very, very painterly to give it like a bumpy texture. And if you get a hard edge, we'll work that out, or we'll embrace it. This one's a little hard, but we'll pretend that's a big piece of poop. some, some big old bird poop coming down on this poor guy. Actually, if this one was a female, they don't have any males of the white rhino. Oh, they had one. They had one male white rhino that was basically impregnating the whole the whole herd to get it going. And then what they do is they, after a couple of years, they will send that rhino to a different preserve to spread out the bloodline and the genes so that rhino is not sleeping with its own children. Okay, so we got a little light here, so I want to darken that up. And I left the eyelid on this one. I forgot really to put the eyelid in, so I'm going to try to make sure I put the eyelid in. They have really, or at least the ones we saw, had really, really sleepy eyes, and I found it very amusing that they just looked so tired. No, I didn't touch them. It wasn't that kind of a place. We were definitely checking them out in their natural habitat. And our guide was like, if you want to touch them, that's fine. Just make sure you make me the beneficiary of your life insurance policy, which we laughed. My husband and I thought it was pretty funny. So the ear that's away from us is pretty light. It's not that light. Get some more. You can also mix up the paint and blend it and water it down on your palette, but I didn't want to. That's a big thing. Like, don't do this because somebody says you have to do it a certain way. Do it the way you want to do it. And if I'm telling you something you don't want to do it my way, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to be upset with you. So we don't want to lose the ear, but I'm going to let the ear section dry for a minute, and then I'll put a little bit more dark around the ear. If you look closely, you can see where I'm getting a little bit of purple and a little bit of the red from this granulating paint. So I'm going to get some more paint. We're just going to keep adding in darks until we're happy. Because you do want darks and lights. You have dark spots, and your eyes will automatically go to the dark spots and the contrast. And if you're not sure if you have your contrast the way you like it, take a black and white picture. That's one of the greatest ways to check contrast is to use a camera and use a black and white. Use the black and white filter. It's really I really do it a lot to check my finished stuff to see if I have it. So here I'm gonna darken the jawline just a little bit, and then I'm gonna blend that out. But I want to give it the dimension of the roundness of the jawline. So I want it to get lighter as it moves in. So I want it dark where the horns are going to jut out and dark right here. And then we're going to come in here and darken some of this stuff up. I want a little heavy on that shoulder. It's looking very, very uh, heavy. So I'm going to come in and I'm kind of rounding it out and softening up that, but it really is, their shoulders are really like boom, just like that. So we also need to work on these legs. I realize that I've been talking and I haven't touched the legs. We do need to work on the legs. Um, this one back here, it is in the shadow, so it is just dark. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Make it the darkest color you have. You want to mix that in with the pink or the pink. With the green, go ahead, and that'll give you a little bit darker. But that little shadow, there's just that leg in the background. And then they have like these weird toes and toenails. So I'm just getting the color down on the feet. Again, feet are the bane of my existence. I, but the foot on this rhino, these rhinos, we found their tracks when we were trying to find them in the reserve, and man, their tracks are huge. And you can tell the difference between rhino and hippo. It's crazy. And do we want to do a hippo? I have pictures of the hippos. Most of them are fairly underwater, but I can do hippo paintings from my reference photos. I can do zebras. I Nialas. There's a whole bunch of animals that we saw, and I can do pictures from all of those, but I didn't want to overload everybody with just African safari paintings. So on this leg, since it's more towards us, I've made it a little lighter. And thankfully, this foot kind of goes off to the back, so we don't have to worry about it. I added some shading on in his knee pit to give it the dimension that it is a big round thing. And then I added some up here on the knee. I'm going to tone that down a little. So when I'm blending, I'm taking from the dark and pulling it over to the light a little bit. So I still have the line, but it's moving. I realize my words are not making a whole lot of sense, but there is a method to my madness here. And then the blooms, I'm embracing it. It's totally fun. I'm going to do a little bit more on this. And if it bleeds in, that's great. This little line, because it was like this big flap of skin that just came down. It looked like armor right at the shoulders. We'll tone that. And let's darken up in here. Want to leave a little space so you can tell that it's two different things. Go up here a little. And it's really hard to do the same painting twice and have it look exactly the same. It's okay. That's what's fun about it. That's why it's fun to do art. I'm on a diatribe. I'm sorry. Okay, so I want to darken up here around the ear a little bit so my ears stand out. Not quite outlining, but giving me a little bit more dark right up in there. And if you need to outline it, outline it. I don't care. So now I'm going to put in the shadow of the ear. And in this one, in the original, I use the Sodalite Genuine. So let's go ahead and use the Sodalite Genuine. It is a dark color. It's not quite black, not quite gray. It's just dark. And you can also mix, but I'm only using 3 colors, so I don't think this is going to take it fully out of cohesion. So I'm coming in and I'm gonna just, I know that looks really dark. It's okay. Inside of the ear. I'm gonna turn my thing. You know what? I just decided that this ear is just going to be dark. And that makes me happy. It's going to bleed out a little bit. Totally fine. If it bothers you, take your paper towel or your towel and dab on it. Pull it up. Totally cool. All right. So since we're using the soda light, I'm using around 6. I don't know if I ever told you guys that. Let's go ahead and put in this nostril. Trying to make sure I go in with fairly dark paint. Not watered down paint. And then I'm going to put the eye underneath his sleepy eyelid. So I really like the sleepy eyelid and I want to keep it. There we go. All right, so now we can do the horns. We're going to let that section dry. We're going to do the horns. The horns, we are using the Moonglow, and you may want to find a clean spot on your palette or not and water it down. Because you just want a really light color here. We're just going to put in some shadow, and I'm dabbing it on my towel, and I'm coming in. So that looks really dark. So I'm going to dry off my brush, clean my brush, dry it off some more, and I'm going to pull that out. And as I pull it out, it deconcentrates it, and then we get just a little bit. So when that dries, I'll go back in and add a little bit more. I'm touching this up here because I didn't like the way it was bleeding. Now that I like how dark I went with this ear. I don't. I'm taking it up. Ha ha! And I don't like how dark it went. So I'm going to switch to smaller brush so I have a little bit more control. And I am going to use the Moonglow. But I'm going to start from down here at the bottom of the ear where it attaches to the head and pull that up. Get the brush wet and dab it on my paper towel. You may like using a little bit more water than I do. You might like using less water than I do. It's okay. So that worked better because I left like the outline of the ear, the inside of the ear, and I like the way that looks better. But to make it pop a little, we're just going to come around. You don't want to really outline things, so then it actually looks more two-dimensional. Weird. But if you just darken around it, give it more of a harder edge, and then you can darken back in here. As you paint, your paints will dry, and you may need to adjust your lights and your darks. And that's why I just kind of jump around throughout the painting instead of working in one spot so I can see where my lights and darks are. So I'm going to do that. Okay. All right, I am done with a little brush. I'm going back to my 6 because it makes me happier. All right, I feel like that ear has definitely, it definitely looks better now. We're dry here, so we're going to get a little bit more of that pre-lightened, and what we're trying to do is give it a shadow to make our horns look a little three-dimensional. So I'm only doing it on one side. It's going to have a hard edge a little, so I'm just going to scrub it. Scrub. So now I have the shadow, but I don't have the hard edge. Now on the smaller horn, I like that hard edge, so I'm going to leave that. And we still need to, we left the eyelid completely devoid of color. We need to give him a little bit of color on that eyelid. And then he had some little like lines and shading. There was some like a wrinkle under here, under his eye here. Her eye. This one was the she. And then some around the muzzle. I'm softening it back down. All right. I think here I like it, but I think we still need a little bit more dark on this side. I like how the paint has separated out. I'm just going to add in a little bit more paint. And he's looking very purple, but that's okay. All right. They do have toenails, so I am going back to the little tiny brush and the soda light, and I'm going to put toenails. Just the impression of toenails. Don't even have all his toes showing. So he's done. We're going to give him a second to dry, and there are options. You can use some bleed proof white and put bird poop on your put bird poop on if you would like. If you don't want to put bird poop on, that's okay. I think it's funny, but I have one with bird poop. I don't need two with bird poop. So I'm going to hit it with the heat gun and shake my camera when I do so because the cord was right next to it. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to hit it with the heat gun to dry it out before I put the background on. Okay, should be pretty dry. Again, using the 6. And I'm going to go into the Viridian and I'm going to put the dark color in, and then I'm just going to keep pulling it out and adding water to get kind of a backgroundy look. You don't have to do this if you just want him hanging out. That's fine. I liked the aspect of the green, but you don't need to if you don't want to. So I'm not doing I'm not doing brush strokes like this. I'm going in and I'm just doing this. And this is not watercolor paper, but that's how I'm doing it. I'm just using the tip of the brush and dabbing to get that foliage look. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not going in like this. I'm not going in side to side. I'm dabbing with the tip of the brush and the paint. Now I need more paint. And I'm going to start underneath the knee pit just to get this section done because it is one of the darker sections. Paint right up onto your tape. It's fine. Leave a little white if you want. And then I want to go up in here. Okay. I need that to be as dark as this section, otherwise that section's going to look weird. And you can see as you lose the paint in the brush, it starts to fade out, which is great. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to get some water on my brush, and then I'm going to start tapping on my paper towel, and I'm going to pull this more of it down. Because I just want the impression of leaves and green behind him. I because this is a very lush place that they were in. It is rainy season. We went in the summer and the spring, so it is rainy season. It was wet a couple of times. It was quite fun. All right, so we're gonna darken that up a little. I'm gonna add. He has to have something to be walking on. She. And the dabbing motion can get bigger, it can get smaller, it can spread out. All right, so let's get in around the horns. And I just added some more paint. And then I'm just working with what's on the brush to really spread that out. You also could just put water down and use a wet on wet technique. But I liked the way this almost looked like it was leaves or tropical plants. But you can see where it was wet, and if I put some of it in, it fans it out, which is fun. Let's make that a little darker just to tie it in over here. And it can go up as high as you want. You can have him just peeking up out of some bushes. You can have it full on jungle aspect going on behind him. It's whatever makes you happy. And you can do this multiple times if you want. You don't have to do it just the one time. You can lay it down, and then if you want to let it dry, come back in and do the effect again. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think he needs a little bit more just water up in here. That'll spread this color around. Um, Almost like a vignette is what I'm going for. I think I want a little darker here. It's maybe patches of more dark. But leaving the white so that light spots show through, like it's the sun popping through. Again, it's your painting. Do what you want. I would say make sure you are sure you want this. Sometimes we have a tendency to overwork and we keep adding, which I'm getting close to right now. So I may have to just step back because I'm going to make a mess of it and then I'm going to be upset. And another good trick is I watercolorists, we are not so far away from our paintings because we're not working with a easel and things like that. We're right up on it. So sometimes taking a step back, taking your cell phone and looking at it through the lens of your cell phone will give you a better idea of what you like and don't like and where you want to keep adding stuff and where you don't. So it's a good way to just step back and do it that way. Is my recommendation. Now you can come in with a bleed proof white. You can come in with a white gel pen. You can come in with a black pen. You can add details. You can make changes to this. You can do whatever you want. Yours. But I'm going to go ahead and call this done. I'm going to hit it with the heat gun just real quick to make sure it's dry. And bonus with the heat gun, it warms up the tape so that I get less tearing. And the heat gun's stuck. All right. Okay, let's do a tape peel. Why don't you guys let me know what you think? Do you want to keep doing this size? Do you want to do a bigger size? Are you sick of animals? Shoot me either DM me or make a comment so that I know and I can start doing other things. I have another bookmark that I'm going to do for you guys here soon. Um, here's my handy dandy sketchbook. I thought it would be fun to do a surfboard, or we could do a whole landscape with surfboards. Ignore the koi fish because that didn't work out. There will be a koi fish tutorial, but it won't be this one because I could not get it to look the way that I wanted it to. It looked like koi fish swimming with blueberries. Don't know. I don't forget to sign it. And then on these small ones, I write on the back the date that I painted it and the colors in it for myself. And then if I send this off to somebody, they have it too. So sign the front. And then you can make notes on the back if you want. Your call. And I sign with a pen because that's what I do. It's on a block. We've gone over how to remove things from blocks, but if you don't remember, you find the spot that doesn't have any glue. You use an X-Acto blade or a palette knife. Slide it up under there. Make sure you only have one page instead of two, like I did. And you just cut through the glue. Still thinking maybe I got two. So there we have a rhino on a green leafy background. It's a super fun thing. Now we have two. Yay! I hope you guys enjoyed painting this with me. I'm going to work on something else and we'll have another one up shortly as soon as I can get it done and edited and posted and things like that. I'm working on designated dates, but that doesn't seem to be working with my creative process. So I apologize. I will try to make sure you get one a week. I just can't guarantee what day it's going to be released. If you're following me on Patreon, I will guarantee that every other Saturday you will get an exclusive Patreon only tutorial, real time where you paint with me. We make decisions, we change our minds, we do that kind of stuff. So you'll get the videos already been shot and you'll get to do it in real time. If you want me to start doing lives, I just need people to start commenting and let me know. And I can do lives and I can answer questions while we are doing it if my husband is available to look at the questions. So I hope you guys enjoyed painting with me. And we'll see you next time. Bye.